Today I'm gonna talk about the young dog. One of the first people was getting his little time for like it's kind of sad because one guy lost his life for whatever reason. It's all gonna come to light. It's not gonna come immediately, but it's gonna come to light. So let's start listening.
To the parties as we prosecute the case, as we talk to more witnesses and talk to, in some cases, more co-defendants and cooperating witnesses. That's been the case in the prosecution of Jamarcus Johnson. As we told Your Honor in chambers, I think the court is aware.
And the weird part about this is the actual portrait. It's the real deal. This is how they break it down. Let's let it play.
The state now understands the exact participation of Mr. Johnson in the conspiracy with regard to the murder and cover-up of the murder of Adolph Thornton Jr., known as Dolph in the community.
Heard what they said, murder cover-up. That's not good. That's not looking good. It's not looking good, son. This is what it's going to lead up to. Conspiracy. But this is obstruction of justice. All this is going to come to obstruction of justice. They're going to give him a couple charges. This is a federal obstruction of justice, but it don't matter, state or federal. It's all criminal. Misleading or lying to investors is a typical example of federal obstruction of justice. Bribing a government official, destroying evidence, or giving a false alibi to protect a friend or family member are also classed as examples of obstruction of justice, which we're about to see how this plays out in 1 minute.
Mr. Johnson had no, Mr. Johnson, Jamarcus Johnson, had no involvement in the homicide before the murder. He had no involvement in the homicide during the murder. His involvement was after the fact.
That's why it's called after the fact, accessory after the fact. I learned about this when I was like 4, 5 years old, maybe 6. When I started getting about 7 or 8, getting a little tall, inside my house, Brownie used to tell me, careful who you ride with, what you're doing, because you can easily get caught up. Accessory after the fact. You don't have to do nothing. You don't have to pull the trigger.
A week after the murder of Adolph Thornton, his brother Justin Johnson, who in fact was one of the shooters and one of the killers of Adolph Thornton Jr., came to him and gave him certain property. A car, not the car used in the murder, but nevertheless the car that Mr. Justin Johnson had possession of, and a cell phone. Cell phones of particular importance because it was Justin Johnson's cell phone that he had during the murder and that he had used for some time before. This Mr. Johnson agreed to take possession of the car, and he agreed to take possession of the cell phone. His taking possession of the cell phone and the car aided in Mr. Justin Johnson's continued evasion from authorities.
He aid, so that's like aid and beg, help. Basically, that's what we're saying, aid, help, aid, assist, or whatever the case may be. When you're going to be out here doing crime, you better know the law. Because you could lose your whole life over nothing. Especially young people, I see it daily, every day. I see a 18-year-old get life for 40 years. 25 years is really life. At 18, you're an adult. They said the mind don't develop till you're 25. So that is a life. You get 50 years. That's basically 2 lives. Because look at all the stuff you could have done.
And his continued cover-up of the conspiracy. This Mr. Johnson also used the telephone. He used the telephone by his brother Justin would call the telephone, and he'd place the telephone up to another telephone, and they would, in essence, trick Justin Johnson's federal probation officer into believing that Justin Johnson still had his cell phone and was still in Memphis, Tennessee, when in fact he had fled after murdering Adolph Thornton and was not in our community.
You see, when he was doing that, he didn't think that out of it. I just tell my brother, no, disappear. No, it's a murder. Murder don't disappear. Same as simple petty robbery. You can't use a seventh grade thing. You got to use your adult thing. And I notice a lot of people that think in their seventh grade mind like everybody's stupid. No, everybody know the same thing you know. That you're gonna get caught. I always think when you're doing something, you're gonna get caught. But just remember how much time it's gonna be. You're gonna be doing the time with people who really love you, time with you.
He also did the same thing where he placed Justin Johnson's cell phone up to another cell phone, and he facilitated a conversation. Again, this is over a week after the homicide, between his brother Justin Johnson and the other shooter of Adolph Thornton, Cornelius Smith. Mr. Johnson preserved the telephone and turned it over to authorities. He spoke with the state, and he's described the content of that conversation and the content of some text messages between Cornelius Smith and Justin Johnson that included Mr. Justin Johnson trying to get money to Cornelius Smith after the killing. Mr. Jamarcus Johnson has given truthful statements to the state with regard to all those acts. Those are 3 acts of an accessory after the fact that did aid in the cover-up and this conspiracy.
But one thing is for sure, wait till they find out who gave that money. They done. Once they find out who's at the top of it and the reason why, they gonna find out. They do. They investigate now till they find out who it is. It's like they caught the people they caught. There's somebody else behind it to me. Because the money. And what was the reason? They could have just let dude slide.
For those reasons, now that we understand those to be the facts of his involvement, now that he's given a truthful statement with regard to these things, he has also identified a picture of his brother Justin Johnson wearing the outfit of one of the shooters of Dolph just directly before the homicide. Now that he's been 100% cooperative and truthful, we're asking Your Honor to accept a guilty plea and recommendation in the case. There's a criminal information that is before Your Honor. It has 3 counts. It's I-2300019. It alleges 3 counts of accessory after the fact for those 3 acts that I just described to the court: taking possession of the car, the cell phone, and then using the cell phone to facilitate.
He getting charged with 3 counts of accessory after the fact. Same thing, obstruction of justice. Just like I read on the card. It said, family before
those communications. Even though Mr. Johnson is a range 1 offender, he has no criminal history. He's agreeing by this guilty plea, which is open to the court.
and no criminal history. So that means he wasn't doing nothing. He was just being a friendly brother. That's all. He was just being a brother. He didn't think nothing of it.
That he should be sentenced as a range 2 offender. These are E felonies. Range 2 for an E felony carries 2 to 4 years incarceration. He's pleading guilty to all 3 counts of the information to those 3 E felonies, 2 to 4 years incarceration. He's also agreeing that when Your Honor sentences him, that all 3 of those sentences should be consecutive to each other. So Mr. Johnson is in essence pleading guilty to the court, open to the court, to a sentence that can range between 6 and 12 years when Your Honor sentences Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir.
The parties are not asking.
And see, I don't know this guy's life, but he ain't been in trouble with the law or nothing. He might have had a good job, everything. He lost everything because of somebody. 6 to 12. No. Then you have to come back and recoup his life, but still. They say he a square guy because since he don't have no criminal history, I think he in his 30s, so I'm assuming he is. Lost period. Like, oh, that's only this, that's that. No, that's a lot.
Asking Your Honor to sentence Mr. Johnson presently. We're asking Your Honor to delay the matter, to reset it for sentencing.
Yes, sir.
There are conditions of release pending sentencing that are outlined in a separate sentencing memorandum which is filed with this guilty plea.
Yes, sir.
And at a later date, the state will request that Your Honor sentence Mr. Johnson. I've stated the facts at the start of the plea, so I'd ask for counsel to stipulate to the facts. I'll just very, very briefly, basically 2 or 3 yes or no questions asked of Mr. Johnson during the guilty plea.
Yes, sir.
I'll ask Your Honor to accept the plea after that.
Mr. Corman.
And Judge, I believe that would be the evidence the state would present in the case going to trial. We do stipulate there's a factual basis, and we're going to ask the court to accept our negotiated settlement.
Mr. Corman, Mr. Hagerman, thank you. Mr. Johnson, Marcus Johnson, come around, please, sir. Mr. Johnson, come up here where Deputy Chambers is. And once you get to the seal of Shelby County, put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand to be sworn, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you will give this cause to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you, sir. Mr. Hannah, Mr. Johnson, have a seat here on the witness stand, please, sir.
For some reason, the law think that's supposed to scare you from not lying. Saying that's supposed to scare you from not lying. What if you're an atheist? You know what I'm saying? That's supposed to scare you from not lying. But this is what we're gonna get to it. You gotta sit down, you know. You're not blocked or nothing. You're gonna sit right there in front of everybody and do whatever you're about to do. Let's play.
Counsel, approach, please. Yes, sir. Deputy Chambers.
At the judge and signing people's lives over. Sit there, they all talk, they signing the lives over. They all gonna go out to dinner or lunch after this and have a good time. They all friends, all their friends except him, the guy sitting in the seat. He don't know them. They all know each other. They work together every day, probably.
Need your signature and my signature on the document, Mr. Hagerman. Thank you, sir. Mr. Marcus Johnson, good morning, sir. Mr. Johnson, what's your real name, sir?
Marcus Johnson.
You need to speak up a little bit louder. The court reporter here has to write down everything you said. Of course, I need to speak up a little bit louder. You can take the mask down if you want to. Yes, sir.
Marcus Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, what school did you go to, sir?
To Wooddale High School.
How far did you get in school?
12th grade.
Did you finish the 12th grade?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever get a GED, sir?
No, sir.
Can you read and write okay, Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
See, then you go right there. I got to the 12th grade, but I ain't finished. But you in your 30s now. Why you ain't finished? That's your downfall. A lot of you young people, you ain't even graduate 8th grade, 7th grade, but you think you know it all. You know the street. You know the street. No graduation level to the street. It's at the end. The road is always the end. But see, he talking about degrees, something he could pull out a diploma and show something. Oh, this guy has a little brains, but that shows you don't. But I don't know, it's bad. Hey, but Memphis is a poverty city. It's in the South. It's just a big town. That's it. It's small. A lot of poverty there. I know I stayed in the outskirts.
Mr. Johnson asked those questions because the law requires you to ask that, okay? A couple of things, Mr. Johnson. You were charged by way of an indictment 2204769, a charge with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. That Class A felony carried anywhere from 15 to 60 years in prison. You're pleading guilty on a superseding information I-23-00019 to charge you with 3 counts of accessory after the fact. That's an e-felony, carries up to 6 years in prison. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Johnson, you have a right to have this charge submitted to the grand jury. When you enter a guilty plea on this information, you're waiving. You're giving up your rights to have this case of accessory after the fact submitted to the grand jury. That case comes to court quicker when you plead on an information. The state will make you the best offer they will ever make on an information, but you're giving up, you're waiving your rights to have this case on an accessory submitted and reviewed by the grand jury. Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you want to do, sir?
Yes, sir.
For the record, I will find that Mr. Corman and this court have advised Mr. Johnson has the right to have this charge of accessory after the fact reviewed by a grand jury. If the grand jury found probable cause, they can indict him. If they did
You see how fast he said yes, sir. Because they told him something else earlier. What they really give if he didn't take that deal. And I wonder what he was facing if he didn't take that deal. Probably 20 years on each count, 10 years on each count. I had to look up the law of the state of Tennessee on what it is for a conspiracy charge of after the fact. I'll try to add it in there. I'm still working on my ethics skills, so bear with me, people.
not find probable cause, they would no deal this charge. They'll find that Mr. Johnson has made that decision intelligently and knowingly. Mr. Johnson, I'm going to show you a document for the record. This is a petition for waiver of trial by jury and request for acceptance of the plea of guilty. On that bottom right-hand corner where it reads defendant, did you sign that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Johnson, all of your rights are above your signature. Those are your state and federal constitutional rights. Did your attorney, Mr. Corman, go over those rights with you and explain them to you, sir?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand the rights that you waived and given up today, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Marcus Johnson, you heard Mr. Paul Hagerman, the prosecutor, recent statements in court a few minutes ago. When you enter this guilty plea, when you enter this change of plea today, you're telling the court that if you had a trial on your case, the state of Tennessee would bring witnesses to court. Those witnesses would testify under oath. They would say things that are similar, that are consistent with what the prosecutor just read. You're telling the court, Mr. Johnson, that if a jury believed those witnesses, that jury would have enough reason to find you guilty of accessory after the fact. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
You have an absolute right to have a trial on your case if you wanted one. You have a right to say, Judge Crawford, not guilty of anything, and I want a trial. Judge, I am demanding a trial. And had this case been tried, you would have a right to confront and cross-examine those witnesses against you. Say you have to bring those folks to court. You can look at them in person. They would sit right there on that chair on the witness stand where you're seated. Your lawyer, Mr. Corman, would question those folks to see whether or not they are telling the truth. If a jury did not believe those witnesses, or if that jury thought they were lying or mistaken, that jury would find you not guilty and I would dismiss your case. Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Had you gone to trial in this case, Mr. Johnson, you would also have the right to present proof. You could put on witnesses if you wanted to. You could present evidence. You don't have to do anything at a trial ever. If you wanted to, and only if you wanted to, you can take that witness stand and you can testify. You can tell the jury what happened. You can tell the jury your side of the story. If you chose to remain silent and not say a single word, I would tell that jury they cannot hold it against you for any reason at all. Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Johnson, had you gone to trial in this case,
So basically what he's saying is, you ain't got to do nothing, but we're going to let you brag because you already gave us a lot. You don't have to come in and do nothing. We got what we need. It'll come up in the other people's paperwork, whatever he said or didn't say. But he won't have to come out and do it again.
if you had any witnesses that could help you, your attorney, Mr. Corman, would send them a subpoena and have them come to court and testify for you. If your witnesses didn't show up, or they just flat out refused to come to court, I would have those folks arrested by the sheriff. I would make your witnesses come in. I would make them testify. And if I had to, Mr. Johnson, I would put them in jail until your case was tried. Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Had you gone to trial and had a jury found you guilty of anything, you can appeal any conviction the jury gave you. You can appeal any punishment that I gave you. The Court of Criminal Appeals would grant you a new trial or even dismiss your case if that court found mistakes had been made in your trial. If you could not afford an attorney, I would appoint someone for you free of charge to handle your appeal. Do you understand that, sir? Mr. Marcus Johnson, when you enter this change of plea, when you enter this guilty plea, you waive, you give up all those rights. You ask this court to find you guilty without a trial. And Mr. Johnson, both sides are recommending that I do not sentence you today, that a delayed execution of these judgments is set this case for a sentencing hearing. And at that sentencing hearing, Mr. Johnson, you'll be sentenced somewhere between 6 and 12 years in prison. Now, is that the agreement you have to state in Tennessee, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Johnson, you've been sworn in.
6 to 12 years in prison. That's what he telling me. 6 to 12 years in prison, man. You gotta feel that, though. Thinking when he's saying that, though.
Tell the truth. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Everything that you say under oath has to be true. If you do not tell the truth, the state could indict you for perjury. That carries up to 12 years in prison. Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Before I continue with this guilty plea colloquy,
Because once you go to jail, anything you own and have, you ain't gonna have that one back. If you got some good people out here that might take care of it, but the chances is you won't. They'll move on with their life. On with their life. That means don't learn you nothing. They got problems too. It's like a compounded theirs.
Johnson, Mr. Hagerman, has asked the court's permission to ask you some questions. You waive your right to remain silent when you enter this guilty plea, so listen to the questions that Mr. Hagerman asked of you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Make sure you answer those questions truthfully. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
If Mr. Hagerman and Ms. Mond said, Judge Coffey, we don't believe Mr. Jamarcus Johnson has been truthful, they're going to ask the court to vacate this guilty plea. They will strike this guilty plea, and your case will go back to the same status as was before this information was found. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Any questions, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hagerman, you may proceed, sir.
Mr. Johnson, we have talked before, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when we talked, you told me about meeting with your half-brother, Justin. He's your half-brother, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You told me about meeting with your half-brother, Justin, about a week or so after the murder of Adolph Thornton Jr., is that right?
Yes, sir.
You told me at that time that he gave you a car, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You told me at that time he also gave you his cellular telephone, is that correct?
Correct.
You told me that, or did you tell me that afterwards you used that cellular telephone at his request?
Yes, sir.
Did you describe to me a scenario in which you would place one phone up to another while Justin was on?
He's not really telling him the murder or whatever happened. He's just telling you what his brother gave him and did the part that he played. Not, oh, I knew about the murder, nothing. Oh, he gave me this, he did that. So, I mean, he's not telling me. He's telling what happened to him.
On another phone for the benefit of his parole or probation officer?
He was called to get somebody's number, and I would put my phone down on the bed, and I put somebody else's phone right there and let him talk to you.
And you told me about the times that you did that, is that correct? And you also described times not just with the probation or parole officer, but also with an individual known to you as C.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you now
But I bet you when he knew it, he thought he was that slicking, he Memphis slick. That's the term they said, Memphis. They Memphis slick. That's what he was being, Memphis slick. Which to me is like a dumb slick. To me, when they say Memphis slick, it's a dumb slick. And Memphis is not. When you travel outside the world, it's a whole other thing. Inside Memphis has its own culture and everything. And all the people from Memphis know what I'm talking about. Now he came with it.
now know that individual to be Cornelius Smith, is that right? And you described to me, and you turned this phone over, and in it were text messages with this individual C, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And some of these text messages, some of what you witnessed, was conversation with regard to money that Justin would be getting to C, is that correct?
He asked for money, yes, sir.
That's for money,
Yes,
is
sir.
that correct?
Yeah. He was asking for money for somebody else, from somebody else.
Okay, and that somebody else was referred to as Unc, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this would be money that C asked for from Justin that Justin was going to get from Unc.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? You described all that to me.
Yes, sir.
You've also looked at some photographs that included one of your half-brother in a particular outfit, and you identified Justin Johnson, your half-brother, in the photograph.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that one day you may be called to testify in a trial on this matter?
Yes, sir.
Did you tell the truth at that time?
Yes, sir.
Have you told the truth with me?
Yes, sir.
No further questions, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Hagerman. Mr. Corbin, you have any questions of Jamarcus Johnson?
No question. Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Marcus Johnson, the felonies that you pled guilty to, accessory after the fact, is a Class E felony. It carries anywhere technically from 1 day to 6 years in prison. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
You have agreed under what's called a hybrid guilty plea, State versus Mailer and Hicks, State versus Hicks, in which you're agreeing to plead outside of your range. You're not.
Hey, I give this judge credit. He's breaking down everything. He giving like all the information. He's not just saying this, that. He giving you hey, this goes to this goes to that. This how it works. Whatever. Use this information. So use it. It might be able to help you. It might be even helping them because, like I say, Memphis is small. Some people related to other people that you don't even know. You know what I'm saying? It's not like it's a big old thing, especially if that judge is from Memphis. Not saying nothing against the judge, but it could be. The hell is going on here? Get back to what the hell I was doing. What the hell happened? Shit. Stupid shit. See, that's what happened when you don't know what you're doing. But here, come back, man. Sorry for that technical difficulty. All right, we're gonna go back to where the judge breaks down everything for the young guy, the young dropout. So, and it's a lot of stuff. So let's take a look at here. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
Marcus Johnson, the felonies that you pled guilty to, accessory after the fact, is a Class E felony. It carries anywhere technically from 1 day to 6 years in prison. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
You have agreed under what's called a hybrid guilty plea, State versus Mailer and Hicks, State versus Hicks, in which you're agreeing to plead outside of your range. You're not a range 2 offender. You understand that? In order to be a range 2 offender, you have to have 2 prior felony convictions. You don't have any felony convictions. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
You can agree to plead outside of your range as long as it's within the range of punishment for that crime, that E felony, as long as you're doing that in your best interest. You understand that? So you agree to plead outside of your range as a multiple range 2 offender. That range 2 sentence will carry anywhere from 2 to 4 years in prison. And you've also agreed that at your sentencing hearing, you will be sentenced to consecutive sentences on these 3 counts. So it's a minimum sentence of 6 years in prison to as much as 12 years in prison. Do you understand that, sir? You understand normally, unless you make that agreement, you cannot be sentenced to more than 2 years in prison. If they were run consecutive, it would be a total sentence of 6. Do you understand that? Mr. Johnson, once the court sentences you, you lose all of your rights to citizenship. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
If you're sentenced on these cases,
I don't understand it, but the judge, I guess he says this to people all the time, but he's talking like a fast comment. He's like, if I give you 6, you get 2, get 3, get 4. You know what I'm saying? If you ever played the 3-top money or the one with the ball under the cap, that's how he talking.
in order to serve the sentence in prison, you'll be a convicted felon. That felony conviction will be on your record forever. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
If you were sentenced to a penitentiary sentence, even placed on probation, would have to render you infamous. For the rest of your life, you lose all of your rights to citizenship. For instance, you lose the right to vote. You could not vote until you completed that sentence, and the right to vote was restored or given back to you by a judge in circuit court or by a certificate from the Tennessee Department of Corrections.
My part, I don't understand. How does that relinquish your citizenship? He from here. It's not like he from a different country. He from the United States of America. He's still a citizen. Even if he's in prison, he's still a citizen. He's still a citizen of the United States. He's incarcerated, but that does not say it relinquishes your citizenship. You know, for some bullshit. Basically, I mean, how is that relinquishing your citizenship? That's how you say, hey, you cross the street, you get do something, you bust a window out, whatever, you get a conviction. Well, that's relinquish your citizenship. No, you still a citizen. You still a citizen. That's some BS there.
Correction, do you understand that, sir? As a convicted felon, Mr. Johnson, you could never serve on a trial jury. You can never possess. You can never carry. You can never buy. You can never own any handguns, firearms, rifles, shotguns, pistols, ammunition, or even bullets. Mr. Johnson, if you had in your possession, in your hands, in your pockets, on a house or car or any other place, if you possess any firearms, if you have one single bullet in your possession, United States prosecution federal court, unlawfully possessing a firearm as a convicted felon, you can be sentenced to federal penitentiary for a long time. If you possess any handgun or firearm, Tennessee can prosecute you for that. That carries up to 30 years in state prison. Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Again, you've been sworn to tell the truth, and everything that you say has to be true. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
You have
And the bad part of that, I mean, he wasn't out here robbing people with guns or nothing. In the West society is the criminals have all the rules. Because the criminals is out here wild with the guns. So basically they saying you can't protect yourself, you can't defend your home. Now if he got a gun and he out here doing something he ain't supposed to be, yeah, he should be in trouble. Not just because he got one inside his house for protection. You know what I'm saying? It's BS.
any questions about the rights that you waived, the guilty plea you entered, or this agreement you have with the state of Tennessee, Mr. Jamarcus Johnson?
No, sir.
Have any complaints about anything that Mr. Corman has done since he's been your lawyer, sir?
Yes, sir.
How long has Mr. Corman been your lawyer, Mr. Johnson?
8 months.
Did he get this 7 months? Did he get discovery for you?
Yes, sir.
Did he let you know what the state would try to prove if you had a trial?
Yes, sir.
Did you have anything that you wanted Mr. Corman to investigate for you?
No, sir.
Do you have any complaints at all about anything that Mr. Corman has done or has not done since he's been your lawyer?
No, sir.
Do you also understand, Mr. Johnson, that part of this agreement, this memorandum, adopted by the parties, will be filed as a public record with your guilty plea? You're pleading guilty to those 3 counts in that information. You're also agreeing that you be sentenced as a range 2 offender, even though you are, in fact, only a range 1 offender. You understand that? You also are agreeing that those 3 felony convictions will be served consecutively to each other or one another, making that an effective sentence of minimum of 6 years to as much as 12 years in prison. You've also agreed that the state of Tennessee has not made you any promises, no recommendations to your sentence other than they would detail to the court any cooperation and truthful testimony or statements that you have given that may have aided in the prosecution. As Mr. Hagerman just told you, if some of those other cases go to trial, Justin Johnson or Cornelia Smith or Hernandez Godan, if those cases go to trial, the state of Tennessee might actually call you as a witness. You understand that? You understand you waive your right to remain silent, and you could in fact be compelled to testify if those other cases are trial.
Oh, they said they could call him as a witness and he waiving his right to be silent. They got him waiving rights, so he can't even plead the fifth. They got him doing that against them 3, so he is doing something. You know, he in a world of trouble just because he helped somebody. Nothing. You know what I'm saying? Because he didn't get nothing. The only thing he got was the citizenship snitched.
Right. You'll also be supervised by Shelby County Pretrial Services Day reporting. All parties are recommending that you be released on bond in an amount of $25,000. And once you make that bond, Mr. Johnson, you have to report to Shelby County Pretrial Services Day reporting. We'll file that order with this guilty plea also. You have a curfew from 9 o'clock at night until 5 o'clock in the morning. You have to be at home every day, all day, until your case is disposed of, unless you are working. I want to encourage you to work, and if you are working, you have to provide to pretrial services proof that you are, in fact.
He got to be in the house at 9 o'clock every day. A grown man. It's teenagers who don't even want to come in at 9 o'clock. Not alone. A grown man, 9 to 5. I don't know what the purpose of that is. Because he gonna be in there 9 to 5 with that Marge. Even short on the Marge, I'm gonna have to put it in the Patreon because YouTube ain't gonna let me say what I want to say.
Working, otherwise from 9 o'clock at night until 5 o'clock in the morning, you have to be at home every day, every night. You understand that? You'll also be in order to enroll in any other programs that pretrial services deem either group programs or individual programs such as random drug screens. You have to check in with these folks automatically, regular contact with the person who supervises bond. And you also cannot possess a firearm while this case is pending and while sentencing is pending. Do you understand that, sir? Do you have any questions about any of those conditions that we talked about? Mr. Marcus Johnson, when found for the record, the attorney, Mr. Joshua Corman, has represented you satisfactorily. I found that Mr. Corman and this court have explained all your rights to you. I find that you understand those rights and that you waived it. You've given up those rights intelligently and knowingly. I do find that there is a factual basis. There is a legally sufficient reason.
Basically, the judge should just say, "Hey, man, you won't hold. Your life is basically you are infinite. You ain't even no citizen. You gotta do what we tell you to do to be done telling you. And if you don't like it, too bad. We really don't care if you don't like it."
Reason for this guilty plea, which has been entered freely and voluntarily, and upon you plead guilty to information I-23-00019, counts 1, 2, and 3, Class E felonies of accessory after the fact. Mr. Johnson, it is a judgment of this court that you are guilty. The court is going to delay the execution of these judgments.
Not a Class A felony, the Class D, so that's like the bottom. It's down in there. I have to look it up.
Will delay a sentence on this case until Ms. Corman, Ms. Mine, Mr. Hagman, do you have a recommended date for the next setting on this case?
In 2023, I suggest anybody, use that phone to look up this information in your city, state, or jurisdiction, or whoever you are, whatever age. You don't have to really ask nobody. Look it up and comprehend for yourself. It could save you. Like somebody told me, the life you saved could be your own.
45, somewhere between 45, about 60 days.
The 60 days is August 10th, Thursday, August 10th is the day for all Warriors.
That's a good day, Judge. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson, we're going to delay the execution of these judgments. We're going to delay the sentencing on this case to sentencing hearing on August 10th, 2023. Be back in this courtroom at 9 o'clock that morning, unless that date changes, and stay in touch with Mr. Corman in case the date does change. But I'll see you back.
He said, be here on that day. Man, I'd be staying out late and everything, because you still going to the joint. You ain't going to be able to stay out late again. You might as well. Fuck it.
Back in court on August 10th, that's a Thursday at 9 o'clock that morning. Make sure you go to pretrial services on Tuesday morning. They will not be open on, they won't be open on Monday. We won't be in court on Monday. Go to pretrial services on Monday morning, June the 12th at 9 o'clock. They're on the 8th floor in this building. One of the deputies will make a copy of the pretrial pretrial day reporting order for you. Take that with you. Go talk to those folks Monday morning at 9 o'clock. They will supervise this bond. Make sure you maintain contact with them. Make sure you answer those calls and those curfews. And make sure you commit to those random drug screens, because that will be required as a condition of this bond. Stay out of trouble. Don't get yourself arrested again. Be safe. And I'll see you back in court on Thursday morning, August the, I think it said August 9th, Thursday morning, August 10th. Thursday morning, August 10th at 9 o'clock. Any questions, sir?
No, sir.
Mr. Johnson, step down from the witness stand. See you in 2 months, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Hagerman and Ms.
Yeah, thank you, sir. That's the end for you. We'll see you on August 9th to put you on the bus, send you to the plantation for 6 to 12. So, and then you get to come back and forth, this trial and all that. But that's his story. This is the first guy who got his time within the confines of this whole Young Dolph murder. It says murder suspect pleads guilty, but he wasn't a suspect. He wasn't a suspect at all. They know who did it. They just got him for hiding the brother. For conspiracy. Sad case. Another life down to 2 lives down to 2. Young Dolph, him. Well, it's gonna be 4, I guess. 5. Because you got Dolph, he got killed. And then all those guys who gonna go to the pen. The penitentiary. That's what they say down south, the penitentiary, or put you in an institution, as they say, an institution.